What if I told you that the guy you like is using you? What if I also told you, without a proper understanding of how this happens, you could have this going on without ever knowing that it's happening until you've been taken advantage of? If that's horrible to you, good, because on today's show, we're going to be discussing 5 signs that a man is using you. That way, you don't get played like a fool, and instead, you're the one with the upper hand in the relationship. Number 1 here is our hamster wheel. Of course, you guys start off where you're together. Then, as time goes on, there's a transition period into him making a mistake. Maybe he cheats on you, maybe he sleeps with another woman. But here's the very interesting part about this. See, after the mistake comes something very interesting, which we'll describe as the apology. Now, there's nothing wrong with making a mistake and apologizing for it. But here's the very interesting part about this hamster wheel here is, see, when someone makes a mistake with you, they're supposed to be remorseful about their actions, their approach, and want to change that. Here's the problem in this case with the hamster wheel though. See, when you're together and the men make a mistake and they're using you, they'll apologize not because they're remorseful or want to make a change or have this relationship be better. They're going to apologize because they want to get back to this state, which is together. Because you want to know what some of the things come with being together? He gets to pipe you out. Okay, that's fun for him. Hopefully it's some sort of fun for you. You're probably counting ceiling tiles, but at least he's getting some enjoyment out of it. And if he's getting enjoyment out of it and he knows when you're angry or upset with him, he's not going to be able to jackrabbit himself inside of you, that's very disappointing to him. So he quickly gives you a cheap apology so that you feel good, or at least can convince yourself that it's okay to let him back into your life. And then what ends up happening, right? You forgive him and then you guys are together again, but the cycle continues, right? So it's a hamster wheel because you continuously go in circles. Now, in this case, you're going in circles with the same mistake. And that's why it becomes a hamster wheel, because the guy that you're dating or seeing that's using you is not actually focused on bettering this relationship. Because bettering this relationship would be making the mistake the first time, having a conversation, understanding what the fixes are or the resolution is, and then actually taking action towards making adjustments so that this doesn't continue to be an ongoing issue, right? That's part of building a relationship with someone on both sides. But the men that are using you are going to keep making the same mistakes over and over again in the exact same ways for the exact same reason. And you're going to start feeling like you're having deja vu with the guy. So a clear sign that a man is using you is when the issues that you're having in your relationship, the fights or the ways you feel disrespected, right, start to feel like you're having deja vu. When you start to feel like you're literally saying the exact same thing to him about a situation that was so similar, you're actually not sure if this was the situation or you're talking about a situation from the past, you're in a hamster wheel. Because all that's going to happen is he's going to give you some sort of cheap apology. Oh, I miss you. I'm sorry. I think you're amazing. Don't you miss when I used to jackrabbit myself inside of you? Don't you miss when we used to cuddle on the couch and stare in each other's eyes, right? A cheap apology, just enough for you to say, well, I do miss you too. Well, I do like you too. Well, I do, want to be with you as well. And then what happens? You forgive him and you guys get back together. But the problem is, in this forgiveness and in this apology, there were no actionable items. Actionable items just mean, okay, we've identified the problem. We've identified why it's a problem. You've discussed your side, I've discussed my side. Now, we can't continue to have this be a problem. So the two of us must come up with actionable items, meaning ways that we can actually make adjustments in our relationship, whether it be on your side or my side, that will not have us experiencing the same pain or the same issue or the same disagreement. Actionable items are so important in terms of an apology because without actionable items, you will be in this same situation. Number 2, in order for us to understand how this kind of works and why this is important, we're going to kind of use a little bit of a Christmassy theme here. So for those of you who believe in Christmas or have at least heard of Christmas before, I hope you've heard of Christmas. We're in the season. We have a thing, called Santa's naughty and nice list. Okay. And the ones who are nice, they get presents and gifts. And the ones who are naughty, they get no presents and gifts. Someone said I'm naughty. Tell me in the chat, which one are you? Are you naughty or are you on the nice list this year? Okay. So here's the thing. See, if you're here on the nice list and your man is here on the nice list, everything is all good. The problem starts when one person or the other is on the naughty list. Because essentially, when we think about the naughty list in terms of Santa's naughty and nice list, the people who are on the naughty list all want to eventually get back here. Because the people on the naughty list, they have to change. They have to change something about themselves, something about the way they act, something about their approach is putting them on this naughty list. And people on the naughty list don't want to be there. People on the nice list, they want to stay there. So essentially, people on the nice list, the people on the nice list don't have to change. Why? Because you're on the nice list. So everything you've been doing is working and you want to stay there. Now, here's the really interesting thing about a guilt trip and why this is so important. See, if your man can make you feel like you're over here, what happens then? Then you feel like you need to change. Change something about yourself, change something about your approach, change something about this relationship because it's not working. Why? You want to go back over here and be on this nice list, like anyone on the naughty list would. So let's tie this back into your relationships and how this kind of all correlates. See, the thing about it is, a guilt trip is a great way for a man who's using you to get you to feel like you need to change something about yourself or your approach. Now, this is the specific thing that a man who's using you will want or make you feel like you have to change in order to get back on this nice list. See, what the men will want you to change is your level of investment. I don't feel like you're that serious about me in this relationship. I don't feel you're taking it as serious as me. I don't think you like me as much as I like you. I don't think you want this badly enough, okay? That's the guilt trip here. And this is great for them because when they can make you feel like you're on the naughty list because you're not as invested in this relationship as he is, you're not taking it as serious as he is. Now, in order for you to feel like you go back onto the nice list, you think that what you have to change is your level of investment, your level of seriousness, right, that you bring to this relationship. So what ends up happening? You end up starting to say, okay, if this guy doesn't think I'm invested or I'm serious, I'm going to have to figure out how I can make myself look more serious. So what do you end up doing? You end up saying, I've got to give him more wifey treatment. I've got to go above and beyond. I've got to make myself available to him 24/7. I've got to show him that I can answer the phone at midnight, at 4 a.m., at 3 a.m. when I'm half asleep. I've got to show him that I can take shifts off. I've got to show him that I'll drive 1 hour, 2 hours. I've got to show him I'll call him every single day, text him every single day, just so I can get back on this nice list. Because this guy's made me feel like I'm on the naughty list. And so this is the whole game here when a guy's using you. He wants to guilt trip you and convince you that you haven't been invested. That way, you start scrambling, trying to prove something to him that you are invested. But the moment you do that, he then says, perfect, I've got you where I want you. Fumbling and stumbling, like running around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to impress me, trying to prove something to me, trying to show me that you're serious. Now, what do I have to do less of as the man? I have to prove nothing to you. I just sit back and we've actually now swapped positions. I'm now the one receiving all of this stuff that you're trying to prove. As you're trying to join the nice list, you're trying to figure out all the things you have to change. But me, I'm on the nice list already. So I don't have to change anything about myself. I just have to judge you on whether or not you're earning your spot on the nice list. Are you following me? And this can be very dangerous for you because once you get into this mode, trying to join the nice list, trying to prove to him something, you will begin overextending yourself to try to convince him that you're as serious as he is. But by the time you end up doing that, only after he takes advantage of you and wastes a whole bunch of your time, will you realize that he was never serious about you. All he wanted was for you to overly invest yourself while he sat back, relaxed, and received from you. And you didn't take notice of what was going on because all of your focus was on giving him more and more and more and more. See, the funny thing about this is when you're on the naughty list and you're trying to rejoin the nice list here, you can't be focused on what you're getting or receiving from him. You can't be focused on evaluating whether he's showing you what you want in a relationship or as a partner. Okay, so number 3 here. One of the biggest signs that a man is using you is when he becomes unreliable to you. So if the two of you are having pineapples, having sex, there will be a connection here. Meaning, if you want him to come over and jackrabbit himself inside of you, and you text him that or you call him that, oh, for sure, he'll figure out a way to drive an hour. He'll figure out a way to drive 2 hours. He'll figure out a way to be there if he has to, if it's about sleeping together, okay? Or anything related to that. Now, what you're gonna take note, what I want you to take notice of in a less obvious sense is the times where you might need something of him or call him up for something and you guys don't connect. So let's say for the sake of example, you need, let's just say, a ride. When you need a ride, there will be no connection between the two of you. Why? Because when you need something that's not related to what he wants from you or is willing to give you, you won't really be able to get him on the phone. When you text him, it'll be like he's hard to reach. His messages are far and few between. He's not as consistent. You call him, he doesn't answer. And you're kind of thinking to yourself, usually you answer me in like 2 to 3 minutes. When we're dirty talking, you answer me every single minute. You don't even leave the chat. Right? You're staying on the chat to message me when we're talking about dirty talk or you're talking about penetrating yourself inside of me. Now that I need a ride, all of a sudden your work's taking over your mind and you're doing this and you're doing that and you don't seem to be as intense as you usually are when we have conversations about other things, right? It could also be something like, it's going to be a little bit painful. I didn't want to put this here, but I think I have to, right? Let's say for the sake of argument, he knows your cycle. And the last time you spoke to him, you let him know that this upcoming week, you're going to be on your cycle. And he's aware of that. Now, all of a sudden, when you message him about hanging out or seeing each other or just doing something fun, he's hard to reach all of a sudden. All of a sudden, this week, he's got this to do. He's got that to do. He's over here. He's over there. And you can't reach him on the same level anymore. And you're wondering, how come this week of all weeks, the other 3 weeks, we were all good. You were messaging me every second of every day. This week that you're aware that, I'm on my cycle and I'm having my womanhood, period coming up. Okay, no pun intended. Now all of a sudden I can't reach you. That's another sign of a guy being very unreliable, meaning whenever you need him for something other than sleeping with him or other than something intimate related, okay, all of a sudden you can't get the same level of intensity from him. And you're going to notice the drastic difference between when it's about sleeping together or when there's a possibility of the two of you sleeping together versus when you might need something from him where he's not guaranteed to get something in return. Right? Because him giving you a ride doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be able to sleep with you, especially if he's giving you a ride to work, right? There's obviously no chance of him sleeping with you that way. And if you're on your cycle, all of a sudden, there's no opportunity to sleep with you. And now he's no longer interested in being reliable to you where you can message him, you can get him on the phone, or he'll be available to you. Now, let's hop into number 4. In avoiding the past, something very interesting happens. So on top, we have the present, and on the bottom, we have the past. Let's say in the present here, we have 2 sets of pictures. In this present picture, there's you. Now, in this past picture, let's put this here, we have the man, but instead of you, we have the other girl, okay? So we'll say girl. So imagine these as 2 sets of picture frames that you can look at. See, the thing about it is, guys that are using you love to avoid the past because if you only have this picture to judge him off of or what you think about him, what will you be doing? How do I feel? And the very important part about this is you're going to be thinking about how do you feel right now. Only thinking about how you feel right now will only consist of what you've experienced right now. No experiences from the past, no experiences from the future. You're only thinking about how you feel on a minute-to-minute basis. This is great for guys that are using you, because the less context you have, the more opportunity he has to make a lot of mistakes. Because if you're only thinking about how you feel on a minute-to-minute basis and you forget everything that's transpired before, or you just are void of that context from before, now he has a new fresh slate to make new fresh mistakes, okay? And you can get caught in that hamster wheel. As opposed to, let's say, having a picture frame of him in the past with his ex-girl. Now all of a sudden, before you ever experience what you're feeling right now, or start to think to yourself what you're feeling right now, you get a sense to see who he was in the past. And see, this is the very interesting part, because taking note of what you see him as in the present can become very intoxicating, because the less context you have of a human being, the more you can idolize them, the more you can lift them up and put them on a pedestal and imagine they're just like the guy you imagined in your Wattpad story, and project on them that they're just like the guy you were watching a music video of, right? You're Beyonce and he's Jay-Z, okay? Even more better looking. You're Rihanna, he's ASAP Rocky. You can project anything you want onto him. Why? Because you're basing how you feel about him or what you think of him right now, in the moment, void of all of the context of the past or anything that's gone on before that. It's great for men who are just meeting you and are using you, because now they can be anyone who they want to be, and you get the opportunity to project anything you want onto them. Now, as it relates to the past, see, when they start getting into detail about everything they've been through, and they start telling you some of the ways they were not so nice, and they were a little bit toxic, and maybe the reasons the relationship didn't work out, and maybe the fact that they cheated, all of a sudden, instead of you basing how you feel about him on how you feel right now in the second, you're now seeing a larger, bigger picture of who he's been since the beginning of time, right? Since before you've met him. And remember, with human beings, you don't start dating someone and they start existing the moment you start dating them. When you start dating someone, you're kind of like starting your journey with them, but everything that's transpired in their lives before that is who they are and how they got to this point. So if you're void of that knowledge or that information, as we say in the Players Club, of how they got to this point here today, then you're void of a lot of information that would be relevant to you to better understand this man that you're with and on a date with, which is precisely why the guys who are using you will always try to avoid the past. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to refer to it. And when you do try to bring it up, they'll say things like, these are the most common phrases of guys who are trying to avoid the past. Let's not talk about the past. I'm here with you right now. I don't want to keep talking about my ex. I don't even want her. I don't want to be with her. I don't want to think about her. I just want to be here with you. They'll ask you things like, why do you keep asking about my ex? She's irrelevant. Why do you keep talking about my past relationship? I'm already over her. And they'll keep making you feel like, it's actually kind of a version of a guilt trip. They'll keep making you feel like you're a bad person for asking those questions, for trying to gather that information in that context. Remember, I always tell you, information is king. The person with the most information always wins. Even the men, to a certain extent, understand that. They know if they give you too much information, you'll have the full context and picture of exactly who he is. That will be a minus for him. That will cause him to possibly lose out on you before he gets an opportunity to jackrabbit himself inside of you. It's a kind of a battle here, right? Relationships are like war. What he's trying to do is give you as little context as he possibly can and still get access to you so he can get to the point where he wants to be with you before you realize all of the other pieces of very important information about him, okay? And what you should be trying to do is say, no, mister. I'm sure you're great. I'm sure you're awesome. I'm sure, you'd be the best boyfriend ever. But before we can confirm that and I allow you inside of me, I'm going to take my time to experience you and know all of the information I can about you before I can verify that you are who you say you are. But the men who are trying to use you will definitely be scared and nervous about that, because they know once you start checking that resume, once you start calling those references, everything is going to start falling apart. The story is the easiest for you to believe when you're sitting right here in the present and there's nothing else to think about. There's no other information to sift through except for how you feel right now. Let's head right into number 5. Okay, so let's kind of look at this here. So we'll start this tree off with the wronging in the relationship. Now, the reason I'm starting this off here and the wrong that I'm discussing is when a guy messes up, and let's say there's a mistake, maybe he disrespects you, maybe he calls you outside of your name, you guys have a huge fight, maybe he cheats, he sleeps with someone else, whatever it may be, there's a wronging here. Now, if this guy wrongs you, there's 2 possibilities for why he may have wronged you, okay? And these 2 possibilities of him wronging you, he could have either done that knowing, or we'll just say ignorant, meaning just not knowing, okay? For those of you, because I know some of you don't speak English that well, we'll say so that you guys can understand that. Now, if these are 2 of the only possibilities that could come from him wronging you. Now, if the scenario was that he did it from knowing, then that means that this was pretty purposeful, which means he is responsible for making that mistake purposely, knowing that it would hurt you and still doing that to you anyways. That doesn't sound as good, right? That sounds like someone we're saying, that sounds like someone who's evil. For him to know that it would hurt you, know how badly it would hurt you, and then do it anyways. That makes him sound like a bad person, right? I don't want to seem like a bad person. So if he looks like a bad person, then what's going to happen from here is you might decide that you want to break up with him, because for him to know this and for him to be responsible for this wrongdoing, that would make it seem like he's not ready for a relationship with you. Now, this is where we'll kind of do the ignorant chart here. See, if he's ignorant to all of this going on, meaning that when he wronged you, let's say he slept with a different girl, he can say to you, hey, I didn't know that sleeping with another girl would be wrong. We never talked about exclusivity in a really serious setting. All we did was message about it and talk about it that one time where we were laying on the couch and watching Netflix. But I don't feel like we had like the proper conversation. If I would have known that we were having a proper conversation about, exclusivity, and like we were for sure putting the hammer in the nail and saying that we're exclusive, I would have never slept with the other girl. When you're ignorant, he can escape responsibility and pass it off as being confused. I was confused on our status. I was confused on what you wanted. I'm confused on what I wanted. We're all confused. Give me a confused hug. Come here. I love you. Give me can you hug me? We're all so confused. Can I jackrabbit myself? When he's confused and we're all confused together, and he looks like a good person, because it's not my fault that this happened. It's the confusion's fault that this happened. Let's stand together and blame confusion for our problems, not me. And we'll cry together. You can cry on my shoulder. In fact, you can cry while you sit on top of me. Can you spread your legs though so I can fit this inside of you? It's pretty small though. And we'll be confused. We'll argue and we'll yell and we'll scream at confusion. This leads to forgiveness, because you get confused. You get convinced yourself that it's not your fault. I know that you slept with another girl, and I know that you did it multiple times, and I know that you basically had a second girlfriend, but I get it. We never had the conversation of exclusivity. So the confusion is what made you unaware of what we were. And if you would have known that I wanted you to, right? That's another one of the things they'll say. I didn't know that you actually wanted to be serious with me. If I would have known, I would have never slept with 3 other girls. But you never told me how you really feel about me. And I just feel like precisely why I tell you, never never operate in your relationship or your situationship under confusion. The moment you're in a talking stage with a guy, or you're dealing with a guy for many, many weeks or many, many months, and you're confused about where you stand or where this relationship stands, you need to either walk away from that relationship or get an understanding of why there is that much confusion. Because confusion will only exist and benefit men. When there's confusion and they make mistakes, they can all blame it all on confusion. So you have to start thinking to yourself, I've got to bring clarity for myself and to this relationship. And if when I am trying, and if in the process of me trying to bring clarity to my relationship, I sense pushback from him, or I sense the fact that he doesn't want to provide me clarity, I then remove myself from this relationship or situationship. Because once you're operating under confusion for too long, you're only going to be in more and more and more and more pain.